All of you coming out to the Good Life tonight to hear a presentation to deal with Africa 1993. I'm sure you'll find, see some of you all for the first time, that you'll find this presentation. I see some sisters over in the door need some chairs. That you will find the presentation our best ability to try to relay a certain set of facts of information in regards to a subject matter that will help you act or respond better because you understand the themes. Basically, our responsibility is to decodify the themes of the enemy to tell you exactly what he's saying, even though he may be mouthing something else. The clarity, the inside look, the underlying motivation is what our responsibility becomes. This is not a civil rights organization. We're not here for voters registration. This ain't the NAACP or the Urban League, and we're not looking for grants. We're not looking for white financial assistance. We're not looking for white approval. This means just what it says. It's for the whole ball of the wax, because we believe it belongs to us. I mentioned on the radio the other day, and I'll repeat it again today, we're tired of playing for our own lunch. If Michael Jordan could get in a shootout with Larry Bird, then let it be over something that we don't already own. We're tired of playing for our own lunch. So we're trying to advance the struggle. I did that radio show the other day, KJLH, which has brought some of you all here for the first time. I have, over the last 3 years, come here to the Good Life to share my information in a climate that's conducive to challenge and interrogation. The Good Life is kind to host us. I hope that many of you do business with the Good Life on days when you have nowhere to take the dollar that you choose to eat with. I hope that you do come here. Some of you have not had the chance to eat tonight. Share your money with some of the fewest people on the planet who'll be willing to have a brother like me associate with someone like them. So we'll give them some peace. I knew that when I went on that radio, something was going to happen. There is a group of brothers who were very interested in protecting myself and sister and our interest, and seeing that when we came to Los Angeles, we had access to housing that will allow us to fight more efficiently for the people we claim to represent. Now, I went on that show the other day, and sure enough, someone called someone else, and someone brought me the message today that we're being evicted out of the apartment that was given to us in the spirit of brotherhood. And we were told right here on the stage, while everyone was here doing what they were doing, in fact, I was told they've even found a storage for my stuff already. And that they'll do me a favor and won't throw it on the street. They'll actually throw it in somebody's warehouse because they love me so. So the Brown Realty Company, I appreciate you. I understand that those things will happen as we get deeper into the game. I know you've given great support to Yvonne Burke, who I say is a flunky for Kenny Hahn. So I know you was coming. I know you hang with those Boule people. I know you did not give me the apartment, but that other brothers who were committed to what I do did. And now that you fired them, you have felt it's time for you to come for me. I don't appreciate who brought the message, because it really has nothing to do with them personally. They should never find themselves being a flunky for the people who sent them. And I don't appreciate that, and I'm going to address it tonight at midnight. This is that type of game. There's no charge to come in here. I'm the least paid, most disrespected person that represents your interests all the way. I'm going to show you tonight, even as okey-doke as a summit in Africa ain't nothing but a front for a white man. And we're tired of having neo-Negroes come on the set as soon as the real thing develops in an attempt to compromise it. part of what we're going to talk about when we talk about why we ain't ever had the African thing connected is because every time it got going, somebody came to bust it up. When it was Garvey's turn, they came and busted up. But before they busted it up, they tried to set up their own African thing called the Pan-African Congress. And as soon as Malcolm X tried to set the thing up and put the pressure and the focus to go to the United Nations, someone come mess that up. So here we are again on the verge of the black world order. And here come the neo-Negro thing again, pumped up and propped up by the white man. I don't care who's there to support it. The impact is the same. You will have to speak for your actions after the information is presented, because after it's presented, you will wonder why anybody would speak at a luncheon sponsored by Mobile Oil. Who would go to Africa and take Cargill, the most exploitive chemical grain company in the world, killing Africans everywhere they can starve them? Who would take Cargill to Africa and call it a get-together? Can the same people who broke the bridge rebuild it? All right. So we're going to try to have a little discussion tonight about Africa 93. Yeah, we need a chair for Sister and Baby. That came in, is in the back there. I know y'all will take care of that. When we pass the donation bucket, when you put money in the bucket, Sister's going to give you one of these ticket stubs. I brought with me 9 sets of the full information related to the African Summit, including who the secret white financiers were. I got 9 sets of these packages, and when you make your donation tonight, Sister's going to give you one of these ticket stubs, and I'm going to pull 9 people going to get them.
Let the donation at least be $3.
Sister said the donation should at least be $3. It should be $5. But the point of it is, do the best that you can. You can understand the hotel room liable to be gone by the time we get back this time. Yeah, strange things happen. I appreciate Brother Jamal, who put up with KJLH to get me on the show. Is that the right call letters? For 2 years, he's been trying to get me on the show. 2 years. Of course, you already know KPFK don't like me, which is why Brother Marcus keeps me on. And African Minds United always insulate and protect me. I appreciate Brother Ostenu, who was a brother on the show with me the other day, is an outstanding researcher and knowledge brother. I really appreciate him. I think we found out something, too. That when we went on the radio and we told people that we would assist them if they had a problem, you would be surprised how many people called with problems. And what we found out, there is no service organization. There is no organization that serves black people's problems with white people. It may be over the water bill. It may be over a utility company. It may be over an insurance claim. It could be over a court matter. We need people to back up our people in engagements with the opposition. And that's no one's job to respond to the people. So it's wide open that some service organization emerge to defend the people. What does it do to train itself? Learn a little bit about a lot of things, because our people have all kind of problems. And we've got to know enough about the utility company to know how to fight them. Enough about a wicked corporation to know how to go to the street on them. Enough about a crooked real estate company to know how to walk and jeopardize the things that they've jeopardized of other people. We must emerge with a dominant organization to assist the littlest of our people. It just has to happen. And you in L.A. have indicated, even to yourselves, that something must emerge to deal with the disrespect that you receive from other people. It's just got to happen. And I have even underestimated how bad you want such a thing, because it's obvious that the people have nowhere to go. And that's just something that has to be done in time. We're going to try to do the best we can to articulate around the subject matter. Some of you I'm seeing just for the first time, so I know when I say there are things we've talked about before that I want to remind you of. For those who you have seen over the years, know about the Diamonds Jewish People in South Africa tape, which exposes a relationship between the Jewish people and South Africa in a way that shows who the dominant interests are. So that when I turn and say, well, you know, in the past, when we talk about Africa 93, we had already mentioned in the past that something strange had happened with the anti-apartheid movement, and the people who were the dominant controllers of South Africa have never been approached by those so-called anti-apartheid people. Now, I want you to know this. Apartheid is doing now what it always has. But the anti-apartheid movement has disappeared. You remember it? Do you remember the 80,000 people that went to the L.A. Coliseum for the Free Mandela? Do you remember the movie stars and others that you never saw before who showed up on the big day to prompt and promote themselves as liberators? But the job has never been completed. But the fighters have gone away. Was this an accident? We talked about before that the largest white corporation in South Africa was Mobil Oil, a Rockefeller Oil Company. But Rockefeller, in his cleverness, took his Negroes, Randall Robinson at Trans-Africa, Jesse Jackson at the Rainbow Coalition, and Ben Hooks at the NAACP, and all of the others. He gave them little badges with Shell Oil on it, and little stickers with Shell Oil on it. And he sicked his agents of social control on Shell Oil, which is a Dutch corporation. There's nothing wrong. They were the guilty party. But who would you accept money from to fight another guilty party? But Mobil Oil never stood an account for being the #1 corporation in South Africa because they paid stooges to distract the people's attention. We've talked about that in the past. We also talked about a survey that Trans-Africa did, which I have a further report to you to make. Some of you I'm seeing for the first time are unaware that Randall Robinson took $400,000 from the Rockefeller Foundation to do a survey called the Greater Voice for Africa Project. Now, just on the surface, Rockefeller, Greater Voice for Africa, sounds strange. It is, in essence, a fundamental contradiction. But it was a successful project because no one knew enough about the Rockefeller Foundation or the true motivations of Trans-Africa, or who would want to believe that what appears to be the most socially conscious brother on the issue of Africa would in fact be a pawn or an agent of the Rockefeller family. Who would want to believe that? Because on the scene, that's the presence of the best you may have to offer. Many people, if you have C-SPAN, saw the meeting at Trans-Africa. They had the whole Trans-Africa weekend on C-SPAN. Any of you see that? I find on the West Coast that you do not watch cable television. You do not watch much of C-SPAN. You don't watch much of CNN because news to you is 3 hours old when you get it anyway. So you're not news watchers. You're more victimizers. Victimized by people who make the news. Whereas in the East, everybody watches it. It's just where it's coming from and where the clock is ticking. Here, the perception is, what difference does it make? What difference, Reardon, Bradley? If Bradley could be your black man for 20 years, and then when he say he's going, the only black man emerges a Rhodes Scholar, we know you really don't care. And that's all right. There's nothing there to care about. But I don't like what you do with what you don't care about. You have not sought to defend yourselves in other ways. And that's why someone can hear somebody on the radio talk about the boule, and people would show up because they hear it for the first time. Because the other people who had an opportunity to relay the information didn't to the people who might have needed it the most. So you're wide open for a lot of things, even greater and more sophisticated than the last rebellions. For those who are here for the first time, this is the, let's say, well, that Brother Coakley, he talked a lot of shit tonight. He accused Randall Robinson of being an agent, didn't show shit. Well, this, under Randall Robinson's own signature, is his proposal received from the Rockefeller Foundation, stating specifically what he was to do and how much he got to do it. The Rockefeller Foundation has recently undertaken an effort to examine how to expand interest and activity around Africa-U.S. relations. Something wrong with that. If you got the book called The Moneylenders by Anthony Sampson, write that down. Go get that book. Because when this Constituency for Africa project shows up, you need to say 1, 2, 3 questions to them to see if they will be honest with you, for you to know whether these are your true representatives or they're the yokes that I'm showing you they are. The name of the book is called The Moneylenders. The author is Anthony Sampson. He also wrote a book called The Seven Sisters, which you might know about was the 7 oil companies, which have since been consolidated into 5. He also wrote another book called Black and Gold about South Africa, about the diamond mines and the Anglo-American Corporation. In that book, he'll show you the day that the Anglo-American Corporation decided that the ANC would be the negotiators for all of the blacks in South Africa, and it was the Anglo-American Corporation that announced when Mandela would get out of jail if Mandela would not agree to nationalize the diamond and the gold mines, which they have agreed not to do, which I'm going to refresh your memory about, because we talked about that in the past. And just quickly, in review, this Rockefeller Foundation grant of $400,000. Imagine somebody gave you $400,000 to go around and ask people some questions. Here's the questions. Now, $400,000 could finance a lot of things too, but they don't put up money to do things. They put up money to know things. And the things they want to know are, when are the niggas going to get us back? We've done a lot to them. We know they're coming. Randall, go check them out on the African thing. Do they mean revolution? Can we co-opt them? Will they go for a grant, be on C-SPAN? Please complete and return this questionnaire to the Greater Voice for Africa Project, Trans-Africa Forum, 545 8th Street. Well, they just got a new headquarters. That's what the big C-SPAN thing was about. They just got new headquarters. It was built primarily by the Reebok Foundation. Pumps the British flag, the symbol of all colonialism. But morality is not what they're about. Please categorize your organization. Actively interested in U.S.-African relations? Potentially interested. What is your organization's primary focus? Well, the first question alone should never be answered to a Rockefeller, because he never met a black man for a black man that he wouldn't crush. So to tell him what your purpose is, for $400,000, what is he paying $400,000 for? For someone to go out and find out what everybody's purpose is. What does he know when he knows your purpose? He knows your temperature. Your temperature tells how sick you are of white supremacy. How interested is your organization in mobilizing its constituents around African-related issues? How interested are you in mobilizing around Africa? Randall, why are you asking the people that? Randall, if you had $400,000, if you just knuckle Rockefeller and passed $200,000 of it off and just took $200,000 less to be Judas, said, pick him out for me, Judas. How interested is your organization in mobilizing its constituents around African-related issues? Not very interested? Very interested? Somewhat interested? Please elaborate. How much media coverage of African-related issues affect the level of interest in Africa among your constituents? How many efforts have your organization undertaken to increase the level of interest in U.S.-Africa relations? Well, they had asked me, and I was playing a game with them because I never allow myself to be questioned or ventilated unless we're in a live dynamic and they can't stop my answers. Like being on the radio live or TV live. In fact, I really don't do TV unless it's cable and a black person's hosting it, because we don't go to white TV. We don't allow whites to question us. We don't seek their questions. We don't seek to answer through them. We find using them no value to us at all. We don't want to legitimize them while we use them. Therefore, we don't use them. We can reach each other if we choose to. You will come if you want to. And we change dances without a declaration because we want to every 3 months, so we can change our minds if we can change our dances. Check. Check for those of you. Check for those of you who are here for the first time means I understand. That was a contribution from Brother Maurice here. Maurice. Check. The people are checking all over. What types of African-related activities does your organization conduct? Policy education, public education, advocacy? Please elaborate. You can see, without me having to go through the rest of this, that if you answer this and you say like in 1983, I fought Lazar Ferrez Investment Banking Company, which was dominating municipal finance in Chicago, and I fought its sister, hateful South African corporation Solomon Brothers, for having a disproportionate amount of influence on a new black mayor, Harold Washington. Now, if I put that down there, and they're the people whose money is interlocked with Lazar Ferrez and Solomon Brothers, I would have, in effect, fingered myself. Now, just a little update. Since we had done that in the past, my update to that is, recently, Randall Robinson gave a speech at a hotel in Washington, D.C., where he proudly announced that his study was so influential that he gave it personally to David Rockefeller, that he would not give it to any staff person who would belittle it, that Rockefeller himself took the whole damn thing in his hands. Now, I suggest to you that Rockefeller is anti-South Africa because in that book, The Moneylenders, in the chapter called The Eye of Apartheid, the eye, the center, the core, the whole of apartheid, it opens up with a replay of the Sharpeville Massacre, which just had an anniversary. Well, when the Sharpeville Massacre came down, and South Africa straight up brutalized, murdered, and shot down black liberation, Chase Manhattan, by itself, came to the forefront of the financially strapped South African government. And when all the world was ashamed and too cautious to assist it, Chase stood up and gave South Africa a $40 million loan. This loan was a bridge of confidence from Rockefeller to the other world bankers, because after he gave his $40 million, bankers from all over the world pounded the South African government with loan money to show shooting down a nigger will get you good. With a Rockefeller who now wants to build a constituency for Africa. What happened with that project was that the Rockefeller Foundation did the Greater Voice for Africa project, and come behind it came the Ford Foundation that hired Joe Lowry's daughter, who heads SCLC, Vivian, hired her to be the coordinator of the Ford Foundation's Constituency for Africa project, which is supposed to build a base of neo-Negroes in every major city to advocate for Africa, so that the moderate white leadership would have a voice to respond to when it says, yes, we need Mobile in Africa. Yes, you see, the Negroes are asking for us. They're seeking us out. And so the context is that this constituency never violates its donors. Ford, Rockefeller, you never violate a donor. Now, when COINTELPRO came out, one part of COINTELPRO you might not remember, that was the part that said over 2/3 of the grants from the big three foundations, Ford, Rockefeller, and Carnegie, were CIA related, like that one I just showed you. Because that's all the CIA want to know, who on the issue and what you're up to. And will you take some money from me, the devil, which means will you go to hell? And economic advancement is a strong enticement when the people are asleep. You see, Jesse Jackson at the recent African summit advocated the G7 hold a meeting in Africa. The only problem is that none of your Negro leaders have ever come to you to explain what the damn G7 is. How many of you, raise your hands, know what the G7 is? Okay. Now, who, besides my cameramen and my personal friends, want to tell the people what the G7 is? Who want to tell them? Who has confidence enough in what you know about it to tell the people what it is? Outside of my friends, because I know my friends know. Somebody, raise your hand. Yes, brother. And then we'll ask sister.
The G7 is Western industrialized nations like United States, Canada, France, England, Germany, and Japan.
Correct. Now, when did they get started? Anybody know? Do you know how they got into place? How did they emerge? This is very important because for the G7 to be having a meeting in Africa, you better get them up on the, you know what white man do? Get up on the wall, nigga, let me pat you down. You better pat the G7 down and see who brought them. Better see what gender they are, who got the tags on them. Because the G7, what you should know, that the G7 started as a result of a recommendation from the annual economic summits of those same Western powers that the brother spoke of. But it was the Trilateral Commission that went to Gerald Ford in 75 that got him to agree to hold the first annual economic summit in 76 in France. 76 in France. That should ring a Masonic bell for you. Now, and that's no accident because G7 is Masonic dialogue. Check? All right? And the annual economic summit, which was a derivative of the Trilateral Commission, who Carl Rowan on the radio right here in L.A., under interrogation by Brother Austin New, swore that the Trilateral Commission had no influence whatsoever. But we can take a Trilateral Commissioner like Carl Rowan and walk you 3 days in another arena and hear him advocate for the G7, the derivative of the Trilateral. What does the G7 do? It approves all monies for every nation in the world. Every nation got to say, can I get me some G7 money? They get on their knees to the damn G7. Now, Jesse is advocating the G7 coming to Africa. But you must demand that he come to you with the G7 explanation. But he will never tell you Trilateral Commission because as a member in the web that includes the Trilateral Council on Foreign Relations and others, you all have heard me play the tape where Sister and I interrogated Jesse on the radio over his involvement at the Council on Foreign Relations, the forerunner to the Trilateral. Now we got the little fish that created the bigger fish, that had created the other fish, and these all fish are related. But if one person doesn't know of, Jesse says, I know nothing about the Trilateral. Well, how could you be for the G7? Unless you know not to talk to your people about it. And always, because by the time you get the G7 shit straight, you're going to swear they God. But then they did say, in God we trust. But God didn't mean God, it meant he. Who is he? And what is he to them? Is another question. Anyway, when the Greater Voice for Africa Project got going last year at the Black Caucus meeting, the Forging a Constituency for Africa workshop was held. And things like the role of the Greek-lettered organizations in constituency building process. Now you're going to take a Greek, a stolen legacy, a Greek organization. Now you're going to take a Greek organization to Africa carrying a false idol all over his body. It's like me walking around with a shirt say white power. And I'm going to Africa to help it, build a bridge. They're getting away with it. Check. And here's some of the other people on here. Barbara Reynolds, Sheila Walker, Center for African and African American Studies at the University of Texas. Mary Shai Scott, International President of the AKAs. Setting a vision for Africa. Here's the president of Florida A&M. C. Payne Lucas, Executive Director of AfriCare, who's running around Washington, D.C. advocating gun control for Africa, saying the only thing wrong with Africa is there's too many AK-47s. Now, he heads AfriCare, and he's given millions of dollars to infiltrate Africa and set up little training projects, always eyeing and earing what's really going on. You see, their money to us in the past has only been watch you money. That's what that Randall Robinson thing was, watch you money. Listen out for the Constituency for Africa project. Remember, when you see it, it's a Rockefeller front. Don't allow it or give it any credibility, because it has none. Only the people, when you know who they are, when you go to question them and they don't have no answer or they won't answer, that's how you'll know who they are. Don't think you're going to walk up on these agents of social control and going to get a ratification for them of what you're saying. Only the cleverest will pull the teeth that ate the opposition. But most of you will be ignored and nullified by them because they're not going to answer. You walk up on a Boule man and say, I know you Boule X, Y, and Z. He ain't even going to answer you because he's not allowed to answer you because the tenets of the secret society do not allow him to talk to non-members. You understand? And we had given an example here that these secret societies, that are overlapping secret societies, Skull and Bones, Rhodes Rothschild, the Mason connection, the Greek connection, that they will not break a code or an alliance or a relationship that they have with each other, even if it's killing them. And we stood up, members of fraternities, and asked them to show the people the handshake and stuff. Anybody here in a fraternity? You in a fraternity? Anybody here in a fraternity or sorority? Huh? You in one? You ain't in no.
20 years,
huh? Well, what was you in, brother? Huh? Omega Psi Phi. See the brother standing next to you? Standing right there? Hold your hands up. Both of you hold your hands up. No, hold your hands together. Turn to each other. Show him the secret handshake. He said no. Now, you need to understand that. And I don't want to put no pressure on him because I want to show it's demonstration. That's what you got to get past. Now, it don't make no difference that it's Greek. It don't make no difference that his highest medal is the Spingord Award, who is proven to be a spy. It doesn't make any difference that the head of it, Ernest Just, was a founder of the Boule, another spy Greek organization. That doesn't make any difference because sometimes they offer brotherhood and togetherness that even can be done under satanic evil worship. But we have to understand that when the shit break out, all the codes are broken. It ain't that I don't know the code or can give the signal. That's the Omega signal. I'll show you Bill Cosby standing in front of 50,000 people giving a commencement address doing the Omega thing. Jesse's an Omega. Bill Cosby Omega. We'll walk you through Omega land. That's not the point. The point is that at a certain point, the shit is up. We're breaking it up. And we're breaking it up to pull rank on what the major dilemma is. There will be no separation of the strongest. If there are strong elements of our race in Omega, this is a strong brother. There should be nothing to separate me from this brother. Because what if I said that there's another code for the liberation, and we lock people out of liberation who don't have the code? Who do you end up locking out? Malcolm? Garvey? because they won't go through the initiation process or stomach a person who knows less than them? I might know more about the mystery than the one who does the initiation, who claims to know. So what becomes the dominant law within our community? And that's where we're struggling toward, is to break the bonds of the secret societies that lock our people down, even the black ones. Check. Now, Randall Robinson brought Mandela. This is something, again, we mentioned in the past. This is New York Times, July 5th, 1990. Write this down so you can look it up, because you got to be able to prove it. The reason I'm saying it is so that you can go and prove it too. You have to be able to influence the people around you, because that is the revolution. You must take the ones around you. Don't worry about freeing Mandela. We ain't got enough to ride over there on the airplane. We won't be held. He's the freest man in all of Africa. The white man will create a Mandela. If he was to die tomorrow, they probably got a fake Mandela just waiting. When he cut Winnie loose, this might have been the fake Mandela. You know, Adam Weishaupt became George Washington. That's why your pictures of George Washington don't look like the only picture of George Washington. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject. Just think about RuPaul and impersonation things of people aren't. Planning begun on South African Aid Bank. Remember this story, because the Rockefeller Foundation, again, took Nelson Mandela when he came to America, right before he was here, and I take that back. He was here July 28th, I believe, June 28th or 29th, I'm sorry, when Mandela was at the L.A. Coliseum. How many of y'all was there that day? Y'all see all that money they collected? You ain't never gave that much money to yourselves. Now the money left out of here. They didn't need money to do what they doing. The Rockefellers gonna see to it that they got money. I just told you the white man gonna keep Mandela alive, because when Mandela died, he ain't cut no dealing with nobody. Don't nobody want to deal with him but Mandela and the whites that back him up. When Mandela was to die tomorrow, the revolution won't be asking for no deal. They want the whole thing. How much is ours? All of it. How much of this is ours? All of it. We want all of it. There's nothing in the middle. I don't need no applause. See, this ain't, we don't need ratification. We already know what they're liable for. That don't need ratification. We can prove that. Now, one thing I want you to remember about this, July 5th, 1990, New York Times article says Nelson Mandela and the Rockefeller Foundation have begun to plan the creation of a South African development bank to change the country's white-dominated economy through foreign investment. The development bank, an idea breached by the Rockefeller Foundation president, Peter Goldmark, at the meeting with Mandela and American business executives in New York last month. Now, I want to say, I read an article by Brother Keaty. You don't even know I was going to bring it up. In the Knowledge Broker. Just to show you, this meeting was in the World Trade Center. And I read the Knowledge Broker before I came here. And in the Knowledge Broker, there was a story, a dialogue with African National Congress youth representatives. You remember writing that story, brother? Yeah. And what was so important and enriching about the story was that the story said that several members of the ANC had come here, and they was in Washington too, to influence other youth and African-related organizations to see it their way in South Africa, that the only way out was a negotiated solution. Now, we got 30 million people, they got 4 million, and we're wondering who needs to negotiate. We know you can't hold that back too long. Now, it ain't no need of me giving in, because I ain't the one in jeopardy. Check. Maybe Mandela got to go back to jail. And I remind you of something. I want you to go back and check your closet. Watch when the shirts said Free South Africa, and watch when the shirts changed and said Free Mandela. Because when they start printing Free Mandela shirts, you sold short. Mandela's free, apartheid's still in, the movement dissipated. Am I flying? I'm lying. I'm lying, I'm flying. It's one of them ways. Uh-oh, Brother Keaty, I broke up the microphone here. It's okay. Oh, you mean it ain't working no way?
I'm getting interference from around here.
Okay. And somebody probably got some wiretapping equipment. But that's all right. They don't have to wiretap us. This will be on sale. We'll be here Friday night. Right? We'll be here Friday night talking about Black-Jewish relations, 93, with the Anti-Defamation League kicker. Black-Jewish relations, 93, with the ADL kicker. And 1 week from tonight, Tuesday, we'll do something called Boule 93. We're going to show all the information on the Boule on the overhead. So those of you all who are predominantly interested in that, we're going to talk about the Boule tonight in regards to the attack on Garvey, but we're going to give just a Boule lecture next Tuesday, a week from tonight. It mentions here, many members of the African Study Group in Long Beach expressed concern over the ANC's apparent move towards integration, a relationship modeled after blacks and whites in America. Additionally, one study group member challenged Nelson Mandela's behavior at a recent trip to the World Trade Center, seemingly to embrace the motto of capitalism that would contradict the aims of the Azanian people. Despite reassurances by ANC youth representatives, there was uncertainty among the group that a key element of the liberation movement might be compromised. Now that was outstanding. That means that the World Trade Center information was used so that when the ANC guys showed up, they say, hey, and somebody need to speak. Who else was at the meeting? Anybody else at that meeting? Do you remember, would they say anything like what you know about the Trade Center meeting, or act like they didn't know about the Trade Center meeting? They act like they didn't know about it? Now that's interesting, because you would know when the head of your organization went and met with Rockefeller. That's something you'll never forget, because that's the day you know you lost him. Or either he did it in secret and they didn't know, but then it's in the New York Times. They must know, because this is the only paper that goes around the world that can be read from America. It went on to say that it would be modeled on the lines of the World Bank and the Bank for European Reconstruction and Development, which is aiding post-communist Eastern Europe. The germ of the idea has now at least been seeded, said Goldmark. Says the idea is to design and establish it and then activate it when the democratic South African government is in place. Says money would come both from the national government and from the private sector. In order to make an impact, we have to be talking about billions, said Goldmark of the Rockefeller Foundation. One interesting thing he said here, says Goldmark said the development bank could help South Africa's infrastructure, providing for instance, roads that would help improve the economy as a whole, and bank investments which could encourage human development. Much more work has to be done, said Ferrara of the African American Institute. Everything is contingent on a political settlement. In other words, if you settle with the white man, then we'll give you a trade bank. Mandela has had a number of meetings with South African and American businesses, in part to allay fears that a future government would nationalize much of the economy. Mandela has insisted that the country's wealth must be divided more equitably, but also said, as he did at the World Trade Center, that the ANC has no blueprint on how to do this. Mandela has also said that less than 10 corporate conglomerates control 90% of the shares of the Johannesburg stock market. 10 conglomerates control 90% of the action, and that's led by Anglo-American, which, again, no one acts like they ever heard of when they come to fight apartheid. The LA Times was not without assisting the New York Times in doing the same story on July 9th. In the editorial section, July 9th, 1990, the LA Times said something South Africa could bank on, a new idea for an African development bank to underwrite a non-racial economy. See, when the black man get it, it got to be non-racial. When the white man get it, it's white for white for white, and that's right. But when the black man get it, it got to go neutral or clear, like the Oprah Winfrey show, Arsenio Hall show. Look, show you right. Says to encourage the transition to a more equitable society, foundations such as Kellogg, Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller, Mellon, and Mott are making grants to human rights, arts projects, and community-based organizations. The foundations are also funding leadership programs to prepare blacks for their new roles in a new South Africa. Now, how can a white man, the enemy, train a black man to be a new black man? Here in the Financial Times, dated February 9th, 1992, and we've talked about this in the past, the ANC affirms this. This is an important statement. You see, if we have a revolution in America tomorrow, think of all the people that owe American Express, Visa, MasterCard. Y'all raise your hand. Phone company, Visa, MasterCard, the Korean furniture store seller. Put their hands up now. If there was a revolution tomorrow, you won't have to pay those people back, because they won't be in leadership or in authority, nor be incorporated to do business in the new government. Therefore, you'd be free from debt. Now, if you're going to have a revolution of a country, it's no revolution at all if you agree to sustain and pay the debt incurred by the last one. Now, the devil was running hell, and you take it over. So you look and see the devil owes some back rent. You decide you're going to pay it for the hell of it. Says here, ANC statement on foreign debt. Nelson Mandela, president of the ANC, yesterday issued the following statement on the alleged conflict between the ANC and itself on foreign loans to South Africa. This is the Financial Times, February 8th, 9th, 1992. This is a weekend edition. That's why it has two dates on it, February 8th and 9th. It actually comes out on Friday the 8th, used for the whole weekend. The ANC accepts as general policy that a future democratic state has an obligation to pay the foreign debts which were incurred by the present regime. That debt was used to kill Stephen Biko. That debt was used to bulldoze the homes of the African kings and queens. That money, that debt, was used for the Charlottesville massacre. And the ANC going to pay it as a condition for leadership. Because if they say no, they out to go. You understand? Is that a revolution? Well, they got one coming here just like that one. The closer we get to it, the quicker they come with this stuff. That Shaft Back to Africa meeting was just about this stuff. Negroes who have no gripes with whites, willing to bring whites anywhere as a solution when in fact they've been the problem. And the only thing that saves them is analysis. You see, if you ain't compiled no score and ain't got no summation of white behavior, you can't call a question on them. So black leadership, that moderate neo-Negro leadership, don't like computation. That's why when the black family reunion come here to that big old park, I was there last year, they could bring Procter & Gamble. You wouldn't say, ain't you the Beast Corporation? Ain't you the 13 stars with the nature symbol? Ain't you the one that control all of them products with all that byproduct chemical warfare in it? Ain't you the ones with the soap that eat up the skin of black people? Oh, y'all think they just, don't y'all know they fill orders by zip code? Don't tell me you doubt them. Don't tell me you doubt me. That's right. Put the samples on your door. Cheer. Tide. Dove. Now, so that the family reunion can come. Everybody's right there. All the ones you should be hating are right there. Dorothy Height, which is all she does, is bring the black family reunion around cherry white corporations in the bowels of the black community, making eggs and wheat bread, passing it out with little logos from Philip Morris and the other hate white groups. Then she could go to Africa and then represent. She chaired the committee of African women at the summit, heading the Council of Negro Women. Anybody here ever seen the Council on Negro Women liberate in Los Angeles? Anybody? I'll shut up if you can bear witness. Anybody here ever seen the the Council of Negro Women do anything in L.A. outside of a reception or a press conference. Because I'll shut up if you bear witness. Hearing none. Yes, brother? The job. They had a job fair? Right, and that's important because job fairs are very conspiratorial because ain't nobody hiring. But job fairs give hope, and hope is dope until you can be ovened. Check. Right, hope is the dope that's going to kill you. Yeah, keep hope alive. That's Jesse Moore. And you know hope is dope. The belief in something that will never happen. That's what hope is. And especially the white man always say we need hope. Bradley say we need hope. Rebuild LA say we hope. Everybody hoping. That's right. Remember, hope is dope. Good hope. The great ship hope. So we talked about that in the past. Another interesting thing, at the African Summit, you will see that the IMF and the World Bank had prominent positions of authority in the African Summit. But I have gone all over this country. Now, none of my friends answer. Who runs the World Bank? Who's the chairman of the World Bank, the president of the World Bank? Now, yes, now, at the African Summit, Leon Sullivan and all of the other blacks advocated that the blacks have a better relationship with the IMF and the World Bank. I raised that up is that our people have never been discussed with about the IMF and the World Bank. The IMF and the World Bank, and I always told you, are dominating the Africans through structural loan agreements, making them stand up on the wall and pay back at the same time. Making sure they can't liberate because they're too busy paying debt. And so debt control has strangled African leadership, not invasion, though they have been invaded. Clinton invades Africa. The headline, the Sentinel. Clinton, what he down on his luck, bad PR, looking like a chump. Black woman gave him a hard time, bombed the black people. Put me back on top with the other white men. Right? And he back on top with the other, bomb him a little Saddam thing. Play that up. Give him a little, pick up a little phony terrorism thing. You got your own guys out there doing terrorism, so you run out and arrest them. Your own guys. All them guys worked in Afghanistan for the U.S. CIA to beat that war against the Russian Afghanistan. They bring them over here, let them shoot guns, play with bomb stuff. Then when they decide they want to get them, they go get them. Probably didn't pay them right. Probably they mad or something. Just the point of it is that them were they guys. And they went out, and that's why they was on them so fast, because they was their thing. And then you look up and see, what do you see when they reveal who the informant is? How close is he to the main man? Arm in arm. Check? So don't get confused by where someone's standing. You don't never know what their real standing is. Check. So, the IMF and the World Bank, the president of the IMF is, World Bank is Lee Preston, who came from the Morgan Bank. You should just remember that, but my point in mentioning it is that the Negro leadership, who has never talked to you about the G7, the IMF, or the World Bank, is advocating a relationship for you with the IMF and the World Bank. Now, just for you to know quickly, the IMF and the World Bank came into being as a result of the creation of the United Nations. And in 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference produced two institutions that would be the financial hubs of the United Nations, the World Bank and the IMF. So they started as a result of a one-world government move, which would consolidate all countries under the authorship of two financial institutions, which it successfully has. You appeal to the Paris Club and the G7, you get the money from the IMF and the World Bank. That's the way they break up the power leadership. And that's something that we have to be readily prepared to deal with, is that they're going to come here and they're going to swear to you that they're the right thing to do, And you're going to say, what is their history, Brother Jesse? And then they're going to say, well, that's unimportant right now. We just got to get on the train while the train is moving. We say, well, I took a piece of the track, so if they turn the corner without my approval, they're going off anyway. Now, so we mentioned those things in the past. Now you watch Clinton invade Somalia. And what I need to show you is that the invasion of Somalia was really a test case. They've had these test cases before. The invasion of Grenada. That was a turning point. They even put a movie on, Heartbreak Ridge, with Clint Eastwood. That's why they reward him, because he did the right thing when they needed it. That was to put a movie on to calm the Negroes' apprehensions of invading Grenada and killing Maurice Bishop. And then they were afraid of Panama, so they invaded it. But you had to do Grenada. Now, to invade Grenada was to see if the blacks would tolerate the invasion of a country who was no size or no match for the ruthless United Snakes. And so when they invaded Grenada, they immediately monitored the black nationalists, the Pan-Africanists, the internationalists. They knew they have no trouble out the civil writers because that was beyond their jurisdiction. And so they watched and listened very carefully. In L.A., are they mad? No, not really. They're busy. In New York, are they mad? No, they're busy. Are they in Chicago, they're mad? No, they're busy. Everybody was too busy. So they decided they would do it again. And they just started walking around the world, beating up little countries because the people showed it was okay with them. And so when they did Somalia, they put their ear to the wall. Will the niggas believe that we who starved them by starving the desert, by cutting down the trees and moving the rainforest, and in fact creating an identified global drought? Will the people believe the ones that starved them can show up and feed them? Let's try them. Took it without a peep. Now I make that suggestion. Don't you sleep that one. That was heavy. And then to go and bomb them, you take their guns 1 week, and then you come and bomb them? Oh, man, you say you was feeding them, then you bombed them? And interestingly enough, the brother that thereafter was pro-America. He was anti-United Nations. They said they'd kick United Nations in the ass if they show up, and they did. Now, let me suggest, and sister, you need to probably take care of that now, too, in the meantime, is to make sure if you leave, that you leave a little donation so that you can further the work, that we can find a storage place we want for our stuff. Sister, oh, you know what, sister, you need to take this with you, if you can. Let's see. Brother Marcus. You need to take that with you. Sister's got that. When you make a donation, sister's going to give you that tag. We're going to raffle off those nine packets. And sister, you need to probably start at the door and work out. But I was going to ask Brother Marcus if he could help you. Hold on. Listen up. And don't run out because you see the bucket coming. Again, it only shows how bad we want it. But I ain't going to put, let me say this. I'm not going to measure whether you help me or not to whether you want to be liberated, because you may believe that some other cadre is going to develop and liberate you. But I suggest to you that if they can't even tell you who it is, it's very likely they will do it to what it is. And that's a problem. When the people beat down the question of whether there's a conspiracy, then obviously they ain't got nothing to fight because they don't see there's nothing there, which means the present condition will remain. Now, let me say this here. Sisters passing that hat, I'm going to keep right on talking. I want you to be quiet and make a donation. I'd love it if you could donate $5. Some people donate $20. Donate what you can. There's nothing to get in here No one said you had to have a certain amount of money to come. We have a lot of work we need to do. In fact, interestingly enough, after the radio show, brother took me to the bookstore, the paper stand. I went out and spent $40 to prepare for a lecture that I'm going to share with you some during the Boulay lecture. To go by this, the Fortune list of billionaires. How am I going to fight the wealth if I don't know who the wealth is? Everybody should have this in their house. Who are you fighting? The greedy. The greedy in the book. The world greedy in the book. You need to have your file on the greedy. It's the greedy that beats the needy. You should have this. Forbes did their book on the billionaires. Put the two together, you get a good picture of the billionaires. These people do not carry out the mission, they dictate the mission. Others, like Clinton, Bush, Reagan, carry it out. All right? But you should have these. Unfortunately, they cost money. Brother will tell you, when I went up there, man said $46. I said, oh shit, I put back a Jewish magazine called $6 that was talking about me like a dog. But I already know that, so I didn't buy it. I had to buy some shit I didn't know. I had to leave that. I like to keep them in my collection. The Tinkan, the Jewish magazine, the Tinkan, was speaking against me. Now that magazine paid that guy, what's that black guy, Cornel West, to write, gave him $100,000 advance to write a book with the head of the Tinkan, and the Tinkan talking about me like a dog. And I can't give up $6 to even capture it. It just had to stay there. But everybody should have Business Week's top 1,000 corporations. You got to have it because it's out of the Fortune 500, which is out now too. The only thing that isn't out is the Forbes 400, the 400 richest in America. That'll be out in October. You take these 5 books, and if you don't do nothing but study these 5 books, and there ain't number magazines, $12 it'll cost you. If you study them, you would advance your race noticeably, because what our race is missing is an examination of wealth. Yes, brother. Date. The dates, Business Week, it says on display till June 22nd. The Business Week 1000, America's most valuable companies. Fortune 500, April 19th, 1993, has an update on the Africa. They keep these on the shelf. These are still on the shelf. I went to the, where'd I go? Pico and Robertson. We got it from there. And then you got the 100 businessmen of Essence. Of Black Enterprise, to keep that. Keep the 100 most influential of Ebony. I don't know what for, but keep it. Keep it. And all of these lists. I'm just making, anybody here buy the tape Wealth, Domination, and the Rockefeller Family? You listen to it? You listen to any of it? Anybody else get that tape? Wealth, Domination, and the Rock. How was the tape? That's the tape. The point to the tape is that we have not had examinations of wealth. Therefore, we misperceive issues because we don't know who the dominant wealthy party is involved in it. And I just make a suggestion. That's a vacant subject in our community, and we need. Now I'm gonna say something. You all with the tape players especially need to make an extra $5 donation because you're walking out of here with that Coakley tape. Now I don't want to stop nobody from taping because someone will hear the tape, and someone will hear the tape, and someone will hear the tape that'll eventually come to a lecture. So that's the creator at work. I can't stop that. I don't want to stop it. I've told people, don't sell the tapes. If you want to give the tape to somebody else, give it to them. If I never sold it, that's okay. But don't you sell it to them. Because it costs to produce, and it's just not fair. And I've had trouble with others doing it. And we've gotten it squared away to the best of our ability. But pass the information. I'm for the information getting around. Now, there is a move afloat. Clinton, being the president, sends a signal that there is a move afloat to put a certain type of leadership. Now, you all should know that Clinton is a Rhodes Scholar. But what's important about Clinton being a Rhodes Scholar is that a Rhodes Scholar is symbolic of colonialism. Colonialism, is that a poverty program? Is that good? Colonialism good? How many think colonialism is good?
It's good if you're a colonialist.
You're good if you're a colonialist or a con or colon. Right, what do you think colon Powell means?
I thought the brother's name was Rectum Powell.
Look, you know, they're scared. They're scared of him, so they say, ooh, he ain't here tonight. You ain't got nothing to be afraid. We on Crenshaw. Motherfucker, come on Crenshaw, we kick his ass. Right? Don't you give up none of your turf. That's what's wrong. We want to give somebody our turf. This our community, ain't it? Ain't it? Oh, no, look at, yeah. Yes. What? Is this our community? All right then, shit. Let the agents know that. They got the thermometer. They want to know if you 95 with a fever or 88 being cool. Now, JDL, ADL, KKK, mean the AKA, all mean the same. Also known as JDL, ADL, KKK. Chase Manhattan, Rockefeller, Arm & Hammer, dead. Oh, Occidental Petroleum, all of them mean the same. Who in here work for Occidental Petroleum? Who in here work for the white man? Ain't nothing wrong with it. Just put your hands up. This is what you, now let me say something. This is what you need to do. When you come back to the lecture on Friday, it's going to be a box up here. Put something in the box on your white man. In other words, you know he's doing something wrong. You don't have to put no name on it. Brother Coakley's box sits up here. You tired of your white man? Tell on him. Put the shit in the box. Right? Check. All right. Tell on him. We can do him. Some of our best information come from people who couldn't voice it. And you know you sat there and seen some shit. I know you know. Right, I know. Because everywhere he is, he doing some shit. I ain't met one yet ain't doing something. So we be up on that. Now, right, everybody know. And I tell you, there's no lower position in life than working for a white man. Don't forget that. That's the.
Say it again, brother.
There's no lower position in life. The scummiest, lowest thing a black person could ever do is take direction from a white person for money.
Including them athletes or what?
Hey, don't they wear shorts and jocks? Hey, I saw an article here in your paper said Magic Johnson puts $1 million in black bank. Where the rest of the money? You know? I never figured that. Now, another thing he stood up and said, he said, I'm taking AZT though I have no symptoms. Now, the world, they just all met and said that AZT should not be taken by anyone without symptoms. I wonder if he's still taking it. You see, the belief in the white man will get you killed. Here's a man got $25 million in the bank. He's still believing in the white man. Oh, he's still doing it. He's going to die believing in him. Wouldn't it be brave if he just threw down a few on us? Darryl Strawberry got fined for one game, $19,000. That's 1 day's pay. What if he just threw us 2 days' pay? What could we do? Half it. No, brother. We want them. We want more. I'm tired of selling the operation short. That's what's wrong. We're selling the revolution short. If we don't put 12 hours and 1 minute in for our people, we're not going to win. And I bet you, none of you can say 12 hours of your day goes for your people because you know you ain't got that much time. Check. Is that right? And as long as we don't put 12 in, we can't win. So don't worry about when we're going to win if your day ain't 12:01 to 11:59. That's a little personal note. That makes sense? All right. Now, because Clinton is the president, and we know he's a Rhodes Scholar, and we know that the Rhodes Scholar is the epitome of colonialism, we want to remember this. We don't want to forget it. December 12th. In fact, this is interesting. This is a big basketball team in Washington, D.C. It's GW. They made it to the final 16. They had a big, tall African brother. What's the name of their team?
Colonial.
The damn Colonials. The Colonials. In Washington, D.C., right? Down the street, is it? Dream On, Colonials Power to Round 16. Had a 7'6" black man playing for him, too. And they wear the word colonial on their shirts and said colonial. And the school is George Washington University, the Masonic thing. So we can even wear colonialism and not feel uncomfortable with it. Every one of them that wear it got a scholarship. No one would ever say, take back the scholarship or get that colonial off of me. They would never say that. Because money and us ain't never been that strong as far as we would resist. Nation Magazine, December 14th. I have a tape called Can a Black Man Be a Rhodes Scholar? Another tape called Rhodes, Rothschild, Secret Society. Anybody want to know about the coming together of Rothschild and Rhodes? You need that tape? And just as a sidelight, Nation Magazine, December 14th, talks about Clinton and the Rhodes Scholars. And it mentions that the Rhodes Scholarships were inaugurated at a very interesting time in a highly interesting place. The year was 1899. In return for British support of America's annexation of Cuba and the Philippines, the United States agreed to endorse British colonial war in the Cape of Africa, known colloquially as the Boer War. A leading beneficiary of this policy was Cecil Rhodes, who was amassing a fortune out of the Kaffir compound system, which means you had black men behind a fence working the damn diamond mines and gold mines, and you call them nigger, which in South Africa is Kaffir. And Cecil Rhodes says, he says, the Kaffir compound system, an unsentimental, labor-intensive arrangement operated by De Beers Diamond Company. He had originally proposed to endow an entire university to be built with funds generated, quote, as he bluntly phrased it, out of the Kaffir stomach. So, Bill Clinton is president from money that was left in the will of Cecil Rhodes to form a secret society, which was to spread out all over the world and colonialize the so-called uncivilized, which of course we knew were people far more civilized than these beasts. But they dominated by violence, not morality. Missionaries soften up the population, military clean up the population.
What's the date on that?
This is Nation Magazine, December 14th, 1992. There have been few articles that have wanted to discuss the significance. Smoke may be another traveling the roads upward. This is about Kurt Smoke, who's a Rhodes Scholar. You're Stanley the Negro here in L.A. is a Rhodes Scholar. Stanley, what's his name? Sanders, right. You knew not to vote for him, didn't you? Right. But it's just strange. He the only black man showed up. Was a half black. Now, you're using sister at UCLA, wasn't you? There we go. All right. Just remember when I heard that laugh. Now, listen up. Cecil Rhodes, this is the man who produced and left the fortune that formed the secret society. Cecil Rhodes was gay, never slept with a woman in his life. He used to bastardly screw the young black males in the butt, and when they didn't cooperate, threw them over the cliff. Just like Gay Edgar Hoover. In fact, the harder they hit you, the more gay they may be. Who did we miss with the donation? There we go, sister, right back. I appreciate you all raising your hands, too. Now, listen up. How could a black man be this? What this does, it confuses the issue of colonialism. How we will unify our race is we will organize in an anti-colonialism movement. Every African around the world has been colonized by some white. All we've got to do is form a movement to conceptualize the anti-colonialism, and now all of us are united. That is the global uniting theme for the downtrodden, anti-colonialism. In America, it's name the names, meaning that once we know this was a colonial experience called demonocracy, we then proceed to name the names of the chief colonialists in each and every city. Check? Okay. It's in the words. Now, Cecil Rhodes, here's another black Rhodes Scholar, Franklin Raines, a senior vice president at Lazar Perez, vice chairman of Fannie Mae, supervises the municipal finances of 16 cities, all with black mayors, on behalf of Lazar Perez. I attacked him in the paper in Chicago. In 1983, I attacked Solomon Brothers, Lazar Perez, and Franklin Raines. And many of the blacks would say things like, well, why you want to embarrass the mayor because he was working with him? I said, well, it's the children that we're teaching. This ain't got nothing to do with the mayor. It's beyond a mayor. Here's another brother brought this up at the lecture. This is Ebony Magazine, December 1979. It's about a black female Rhodes Scholar. In fact, someone else brought from the Jet. The first black Rhodes Scholar was Elaine Locke, a founding Boule member in Washington. He was a Rhodes Scholar from 1908 to 1910. There were no black Rhodes Scholars again until 1964 because Elaine Locke was just a symbolic relationship to show that the Boule and the Rhodes Rothschild boys were interconnected through their round table group. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And this is a real Bobo article. What is she devoted to do? She's going to clean up illiteracy and all those other goofy things they always talk about. Her name is Karen Stevenson. First black female to win a Rhodes Scholar, 1979. That's just for the record. That's Ebony Magazine, December 79. Because when you read it, Ebony don't say nothing against Rhodes, Cecil Rhodes. It don't say he killed millions of blacks. It doesn't say Rothschild helped him out. It doesn't say he colonized the world, had a secret society. It don't say none of that. In fact, it acts like it was an honor for her to have gotten it. But that only raises the question. Don't forget that it was the Rothschild who got with Rhodes to further colonial experience. Get the book Black and Gold by Anthony Sampson. We mentioned that. Also get a book called The Randlords, which looks at how all of that conglomeration came together. And the Diamonds Jewish people in South Africa is the best thing you could get tonight related to it and the Rhodes Rothschild Secret Society. Remember this, that it was out of the Cecil Rhodes money that the Council on Foreign Relations was started. Let me repeat that. It was out of the Cecil Rhodes money that the Council on Foreign Relations was started. You will say, well, what's important about that? That Clinton's position on Africa was written by a young white boy named Michael Clough, C-L-O-U-G-H, who is head of the African section at the Council on Foreign Relations. It says here, one can trace this flirtation very exactly through other institutions within the American political network, such as the Council on Foreign Relations, which was also set up with seed money from the Rhodes Trust. Now we're talking about the devil funding some shit. And everything the devil touched expresses hell. Okay? So now we say that the CFR was created from the Rhodes money. Now, does that make the CFR a positive organization?
Hell no.
Now, here is a brochure from the CFR in Chicago. Also, I got another brochure of the CFR in Chicago, and all you know when you look at it is that every leader in America and the world is there. Gorbachev, there's Gorbachev on the cover. Valerie Giscard d'Estaing, former head of France. Henry Kissinger, Jimmy Carter, Margaret Thatcher, James Baker, Robert McNamara, Crown Prince Julian, John Kenneth Galbraith, Nehru, Helmut Schmidt, Adlai Stevenson, Eleanor Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, Boris Yeltsin, Al Gore, Lech Walesa, telling you all the people that speak at their regular meetings. Imagine one night we have a meeting, I tell you I got Gorbachev there. Or Henry Kissinger going to be there. Or Clinton going to show up. In other words, these people are reporting to these people because these are the people that run those people. Check? Yeah. Now, what is the Council on Foreign Relations' impact on you? It just so happens that foreign policy of this government is controlled through the president, who's a member, also on the Trilateral Commission, also a Rhodes Scholar, okay? In fact, here's a guy head of domestic policy. He's a Rhodes Scholar. White boy named Bruce Reed, Deputy Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy. So everything related to you is done through a Rhodes Scholar. Stephanopoulos, a Rhodes Scholar. Head of the Labor Department is a Rhodes Scholar. But Secretary of State Warren Christopher is the Vice Chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations. Does that make him positive? He also chaired what? Cool the Niggas Out in L.A. report. Cool the Niggas Out in L.A. report is what he chaired. Don't y'all act like it was no investigation. You know what the fuck caused the rebellion? White supremacy. And that ain't even in the damn report. Anyway, it's really called Let's Cool L.A. That's right. Now, also, Warren Christopher is the vice chairman of the CFR. The deputy secretary of state, who's that? What's the, huh? The deputy secretary of state is a black man. That's what make it even worse. He ain't even white. He black. He beige. His name is Clifton Wartime. He's a director of the Council on Foreign Relations, also on the Trilateral Commission. The third in command in the State Department, Pete Turnoff, is the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, Clinton goes to Africa. What you think he gonna do? He gonna do what Cecil Rhodes did. In fact, that's pretty much what he been doing. Which means that if they had a goal as a secret society, their horses are in place like never before. And if you ever never gave a fuck about what I was saying, take home and rub your pillow tight. Because the team that means to kill us is in the chairs. All right? Let there be no doubt about it. Carter was picked up by the Trilateral and made a president and kicked back out with them when his sympathy and his loyalties got confused. Didn't it? Didn't it? He's still around doing some simple shit like building houses. Because he wants to repent. Because he knows the white man that he served will never build a house. And he showed you build a house for $8,000 and a little help. Why ain't we building our own damn houses without Jimmy Carter? But Jimmy Carter can come to town and 100 people show up with hammers and work crews, and they get a damn house up. They build 10 houses. And it gives hope to the black people. Yes, Brother Jamal.
I got a little sidebar. We're just talking about in terms of State Department investigations and State Department personnel in Africa. When we were up at the stand yesterday, I was reading a little report where they were discussing bringing April Gillespie back.
Oh, yeah.
And they brought her in as a special assistant through the United Nations to investigate and fact-find in Somalia as a prelude to bringing her back as a special assistant in the State Department concerning African affairs.
Who is that?
April Gillespie.
That's the one who met with Saddam.
Right.
And clearly told him, take your ass in there and invade them Kuwaitis so we can come bomb you.
Right.
Okay. Just so you know who she is. That's her new assignment. Head of the South African desk. When a white boy told on him, see, a white boy told on this secret society named Carroll Quigley. He wrote this book, Anglo-American Establishment. I've talked about it in every lecture I ever gave. Carroll Quigley told on the secret society. He was a white man. Harvard, Yale, Princeton professor. Very credible white man. Clinton thanks him for at Georgetown into the Rhodes Scholarship Program. He knew a lot about it. He wrote about it. And I'm just going to repeat for you these 3 lines what he said. The Rhodes Scholarship, established by the terms of Cecil Rhodes' 7th will and known to everyone, is not so widely known as that Rhodes in his 5 previous wills left his fortune to form a secret society which was to devote itself to the preservation and expansion of the British Empire. And what does not seem to be known to anyone is that this secret society, created by Rhodes, it continues to exist to this day. To be sure, this secret society is not a childish thing like the Ku Klux Klan. It does not have any secret robes, secret hand clasp, or secret passwords. It does not need any of these since its members know each other intimately. It does exist, hold secret meetings over which the senior members preside. Now, what's important about that is that he wrote a book called The Anglo-American Establishment. He wrote a follow-up. He wrote a pre-book called Tragedy and Hope. And in the Washington Post, the whites let other whites know what they felt of Quigley for telling. The professor who knew too much. And right here in the subtitle, It says, for identifying a power-mad clique that wants to control the world, Quigley was labeled the Joe Valachi of political conspiracies. And if you remember the movie Joe Valachi with Charles Bronson, he was the man who verified that there was organized crime because Gay Edgar Hoover was being whiteballed by Meyer Lansky and didn't see none. This is a Washington Post, Sunday Magazine, and the date is, it's on here too, it's here we go. It's March 23rd, 1975. Washington Post, Sunday Magazine, March 23rd, 1975. The professor who knew too much, borrowing a few critical lines from a Georgetown University professor's book, the ultra-right made a scholar an unwilling hero. You see, they put Carroll Quigley's information in the Rockefeller file, and none there call it conspiracy. And the other whites hated it because that's how I found it. And then I found it, I went and got you. And look, you showed up. And you're here, too. Now, we know Clinton is with it because the Anglo-American Corporation, which is the corporation that was left from the Cecil Rhodes Trust, they exposed, there's not too many newspapers ran this story, but in Washington they exposed Clinton profited from South African investments. Found out that the largest investments of Hillary and Bill Clinton were 177 shares of stock in De Beers diamond mines. And why wouldn't he have De Beers since it's a subsidiary of Anglo-American? And Anglo-American is the corporation that Cecil Rhodes founded to build the Rhodes Scholarships. But they didn't run this in the LA Times. In fact, they ran it in the Washington Times and suppressed the story all over the country. This is the Washington Times, July 9th, 1992. This could have ruined his attempt to be president with the black people. But there's Randall Robinson and the rest of them saying, if this is true, when it was reported as fact, not speculation. They identified the number of shares and they admitted it. In fact, a guy passed me this the other night showing that Clinton is a demole. Ask a person who has a blue Toyota pickup truck parked around the block to see Marcus. Blue Toyota pickup truck? Anybody driving that? Okay, there we go. Now, but it just shows here that Clinton is a demole, which is the Masonic Youth Organization, which is patterned after the Knights of Templar, of which Demole was when he was burned at the stake in 1314. A brother bought this the other day, and all I'm suggesting is that here is another layer of secret society that Clinton was involved in, and he says he never would have made it if he hadn't have been a demole, and in fact was a senior demole, meaning as an adult he participated in other demole activities. He served as master counselor, director of chivalry, Legion of Honor, and Demole Hall of Fame in 1988. That's the Masonic Youth Organization. And you should remember it for that. Whenever you think about South Africa and domination, always watch the gold prices. Whenever they want to pay off the white dominators in South Africa, they up the price of gold. And if you haven't been watching lately, gold's been shooting on up. $80, $90, it went up. Now, if you got a bar of gold sitting here, and the price go up $90 an ounce, and your stuff is just sitting there, you've made profit without movement. Meaning someone can artificially jack up the price and increase your wealth any day you're behaving. When the clerk gets Mandela to go along with the okie doke, gold goes up. You understand it? Because that would assist those gold bearers. Little sidebar, I mentioned the Malcolm X thing. You remember all that time they spent on the Malcolm movie, in essence hiding that Malcolm was making a strong African connection, which is nowhere in the movie. What you know about the movie is that he left Africa out the movie, but when you read the Judas Factor, you see how strong Africa was. Which means that even still to this day, they'd rather have Shaft in Africa meeting and not have the Malcolm type in Africa meeting. That's preferred world, or preferred leadership. Remember the ADL story, that the ADL monitored people who were in the anti-apartheid movement and also shared the information with the South African and Israeli government. That would give you the indication as to why it was that the anti-apartheid movement was not successful, and also the fact that it was being spied upon by the ADL. What is the ADL's relationship with the lieutenants of Satan? Here's from the Yearbook of Foreign Affairs. This is the magazine of the Council on Foreign Relations. This is what I'm going to show you the cover of it. It's in here somewhere. The cover of Foreign Affairs. And Foreign Affairs is their magazine, but here's the first black man ever to speak at the Council on Foreign Relations in 1925, W.E.B. Du Bois. First black man to speak there. They probably asked him, say, what was it like to put Marcus Garvey in jail? It's 1 year after Garvey went to jail or was indicted. And the important thing to this is that his Pan-African movement was to supplement the destruction of Garvey. We talked about the other day that Army Spy Project. In the tape we did the other day, Tuesday night, and some of you all should get that tape, that it was Emmett Scott and R.R. Moulton. Emmett Scott and R.R. Moulton were from Tuskegee. They were on the Committee for Liberia. The Committee for Liberia got a $5 million loan for the head of Liberia to write a letter refusing to allow Marcus Garvey to set up his headquarters in Liberia, which he wanted to do. That's important because $5 million in 1918 money is extremely significant. And the head of Liberia wrote that letter, which was ran in the NAACP magazine, declaring that they would not allow Marcus Garvey to beachhead there. The purpose of that is that when we have talked about the Boule, which started in 1904, its first real assignment was to stop the Back to Africa movement by Marcus Garvey at a time when the white man was grooming him, a Negro, to be a part of the system. And we looked at that very carefully. We'll talk about that again next Tuesday night when we talk about the Boule. But remember, when someone says, well, what is it about that black male secret society that you don't like? It is that we can prove, beyond any reason of a doubt, that the Boule was used against Marcus Garvey, as well as that the Boule was used against Malcolm X. And Malcolm X called them the Big Six. He did not know there was even greater numbers, but he called them Big Six because that's the best he could conceptualize about a group of moderate Negroes who would not liberate their community from the jump. Their goal was non-liberation. Now, in this climate of hysteria, there has been the desire to reorganize colonialism, to re-represent it, to bring it back. It was so good, it should come back. And I make a suggestion that very quietly, whites in all sorts of places have gone out to convince each other that colonialism is the right solution to the African problem. No, that's interesting. The brother mentioned neo-colonialism. That's an interesting concept because what I have found, brother, and I needed to declare tonight, if you remember, Kwame Nkrumah wrote a book called The Last Stage of Imperialism, Neo-Colonialism. Well, what I am studying about the new white move to recolonize is that he wants to put himself back in the saddle. He does not want the overseer. He wants to take direct control of Africa. He does not want a black man to do it. He wants the black man to soften up the population because the white missionary can no longer be successful in that role. Okay. We can find verification of such in two articles, I think, that best suggest what it is, in fact, that they're doing and how it is that they're doing that. The two articles I mentioned casually in the last couple of days of being here. This article is in Foreign Affairs called Retreat from Africa. This is in the year-end review issue. It comes out in December, January, 93. The annual review of the world. And in it was an article called Retreat from Africa, written by a white woman who's a fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. What else? She's also Nairobi correspondent for Time magazine. You all remember the other night I showed you that ad that ran on C-SPAN where Time magazine took the cover of a story it did on Africa and turned the black baby's head into a skull and turned the skull into a symbolism that blacks were dying in Africa. And that was an important symbol for them to relay. I'm going to show you the cover, and I have to look in the box and see if I have the videotape. If I have the videotape at the end of the lecture, I'll re-show it so that you could see the ad, which was a takeoff on the cover that they did about death in Africa. Now, all of these death in Africa stories are very important because the way you get the people to agree to something is to tell them you're dying. Look at the people who took AZT because they thought they was dying. When AZT kill you for real. When you get that good white solution when you dying, you dead. So we be up and on the lookout for that good white solution. But I want to share with you that cover. For the record, for the video camera. In fact, here we go. Oh man, it just reminded me. Wait till you all see these pictures. This is the cover that Time magazine turned that little baby's head into a skeleton and said, Africa is about to die off. Read about it in Time magazine. And this was about their story that they ran. And the story produced pictures all coded in red, black, and green. No accident that Time magazine coded this story on the death in Africa in red, black, and green. And they put all those dirty-looking stories in there. Stories that want to make our people look like they're falling out the back door. And what we found to that is when they set up this, remember they were trying to take the children and check their chemicals out in their brain, the Violence Initiative? One thing the Violence Initiative said, that Goodwin said, the one who was pushing it, Goodwin, he made this statement. Before a policy of biomedical social control becomes feasible, the society must be faced with economic hardship and some degree of social disintegration. The leader or leadership of the state must feel insecure. The society must contain a minority population which can easily be identified, blamed, and subjected to special treatment. All of these conditions now exist and are mentioned directly and indirectly by Goodwin as necessary for the solutions that the big whites seek. So part of the painting of the disparity picture, showing you them little babies in Somalia, one of the magazines I had to buy was Vanity Fair. Brother had brought it up here the other night for me to look at. There's a brother here who brought me that package the other night because I brought it back. It had the Vanity Fair in it. Good, at least I get to finish reading it, even though I got my own Vanity Fair. But look at what was in the story. You need to see this. There was the top story listed here is called Tragedy in the Desert, The Sudan's Quiet Death by Roger Rosenblatt. And part of what they're doing is they're using pictures to make people say, oh, it's so terrible. What will we do? Say, we'll take it over. We'll make it better. But didn't we fuck it up? Don't worry, they don't analyze out there. They don't even believe it's a conspiracy. Look at what the picture says. The last place on earth. And they're looking out a little hole or a tunnel. The last place on earth. A desperate, and the caption says, in the ravaged beauty of southern Sudan, writer Roger Rosenblatt and photographer Salgado found a world ending without a whisper. Found a world ending without a whisper. Does ending mean they coming back? Does ending mean resurrection? Does ending mean positive? Do you think what's happening to them could happen to you? Yes. The second page of the picture says the ultimate destination. Look what they did. What is that? It's a damn grave. Now, who would shoot a picture of a grave and put it in a story on Africa? Except for the murderer. But you know what? Vanity Fair don't play in the black community. This is to convince the whites that you're dead in the doorknob. This is the white move. And the white move suggests if they can hold your ass quiet just a little bit longer, you keep your ass going to work, you be too busy to protect your own butt, you'll be in them gas ovens again. That's what Malcolm said. If you don't develop an analytical mind, you'll be in them gas ovens again, and don't think he won't do it, because he already has. The date of the Vanity Fair is July 93. And look at the white man on the cover running. Say, where you running? I'm running to kill me some niggas. That's what they're saying to each other. World Press put this one out. Africa on its own. Yo.
Didn't the administration say that the terrorist groups that they expected might have been from Sudan?
Right.
What did he say?
Saying that, he said, didn't Clinton say that the terrorist groups were being influenced and financed by the Sudan? And then here comes the Sudan story. Because they tell you that these stories are used for intervention. This was what they did to get in Somalia. This was what they did. When they got there, you watch them soldier boys, got there, say, man, I got there, I saw grass and flowers and cattle and them people eating good. It wasn't about starvation, it was about penetration. And the story just goes on. In an epic trek that has gone virtually unnoticed by the outside world, tens of thousands of young boys have been wandering through the wasteland of southern Sudan. They are orphans, their families killed in the world's most neglected civil war. They are part of a vast legion of survivors desperately searching for a refuge as their civilization dies around them. Look at the other stories. Again, all pictures. Very little words. The words only say death, death, death. But the pictures are more powerful than the words. This don't say, look at what we the white people did. It don't say that. In fact, none of these analyses even deal with who were the perpetrators. Look at what they're doing. You know, you show a black woman and a baby. That's the most sensitive picture you can produce. A black woman and a baby, and they got the black woman looking distressed and the baby too weak to lay next to the mother's nipples. And you wouldn't even think of equating Vanity Fair with white supremacy. But I'm telling you that that picture is as much a part of the CIA as the CIA. Because those are the pictures that produce the consensus to make the killing of the people possible. Now, over in the Retreat from Africa story, there's a discussion. Here you go. In the Retreat from Africa story, there's a discussion about colonializing Africa. In the New York Times magazine, I mentioned this to you the other night. I'm going to read you some of this. You're not going to believe this. April 18th, 1993, New York Times magazine, colonialism is back. And not a moment too soon. You see that? Is that what it say? Is this the New York Times or not? Does that say New York Times magazine? Does that say New York Times magazine? That say New York Times magazine? Does this say, and there's that hidden hand we always talked about. Does that not say colonialism is back? Is colonialism positive? Is colonialism legal? No. Don't you fall for it. Remember, there is no law to protect a black man from a white man with a mission. What will back him up is you will kick his ass. That will back him up. No other threat will make him retreat. The thought of losing it all is all he's afraid of. This suggestion, and let me read you what it says. Listen to this. We're witnessing the revival today of colonialism, a trend that should be encouraged, which means this is a proactive article. The article is being used to promote something, to promote a concept of thinking. Colonialism is back, and not a moment too soon. That's the promotion of a concept. It says here, it seems to be on practical as well as moral grounds. There is simply no alternative in nations where governments have crumbled and the most basic conditions for civilized life have disappeared, as is now the case in many third world countries. Again, that's a misnomer. This is the first world. They call it third world because they have colonized it, renaming it, making it self first. Says here, this decision indicated, among other things, that the new colonialism is not just about white men running the affairs of non-white countries, but can involve intervention in Europe or elsewhere. Excuse me. But it is obvious that Africa, where normal government is breaking down in a score or more of states, is the most likely theater for such action. The appeals for help have come not so much from the Africa's political elite, who are anxious to cling unto the trappings of power, but from ordinary, desperate citizens who carry the burden of misrule. Now, when has the white man ever listened to a citizen? Now, all of a sudden, they done miss everything you told them, asked them, begged them, hoped them. All the way now over in Africa, all up in the bush, secretly hearing Somalians say, come colonize me, please. So now they're claiming that they're listening to, never listen to shit of yours. But now they're listening. And they're saying that because not the leaders, but the people want us, we're going to go over there and help the people. Name me 3 names of who called your ass. They ain't even got telephones. Ain't writing no letters. Ain't sent you no newspaper article. Ain't sent you no cable show. But all of a sudden, with no way of hearing it, you heard it all. Now again, if you don't break down the rationale for them doing it, they will do it. Right. As silly as the dumb shit sounds, it sounds dumb, don't it? Yeah. All colonial activity sounded dumb. It is obvious that Africa is the most likely theater for such action. The grassroots origin of the appeal for the return of colonialism puts the whole phenomenon in a different perspective. The present generation, even in the former colonial powers, have been brought up to consider any form of colonialism as inherently evil, a gross form of oppression practiced by technologically superior powers on weaker races. The Greeks, who invented colonialism, founded city colonies to spread their civilization, and the Romans, who inherited the Greek Empire, did the same. Most of the people thus colonized welcomed this form of rule. Did you hear what I said? You hear what they're doing? I'm going to say it again. The Greeks, who invented colonialism, founded city colonies to spread their civilization. The Romans, who inherited the Greek Empire, did the same. Most of the people thus colonized welcome this form of rule. Right. Come kill me, Thanksgiving. It then introduces the idea that in Africa we should create trusteeships. It says that we should do what we did in the League of Nations when we had it in 1918. We split countries up and put them under supervision of other countries that would control them until they were able to control themselves. Trusteeship was a notion derived from English common law, in which a child was made a ward of a court until attaining the age of 21. Says they also created something called condominiums, which were countries that they controlled. You know, it's like you own the apartment but not the land. Another white real estate trick. Yeah, you own that apartment, so the motherfucker down below you tears his out, and yours falls, right? You don't own shit but not even the elevator. Listen to this. Then came the reckoning, born, but not indeed by the colonial powers themselves, which on balance benefited financially from surrendering their white man's burden, as Kipling called it, but by their former subjects. In Africa, the instability began immediately after the Belgian Congo was destabilized in 1960. Well, that's bullshit. When the Belgian Congo came up with Lumumba, they went over there and got suck-butt Mobutu to jack him up. In fact, they got that videotape with Mobutu kicking him in the face with his hands behind his back. Al Haig, Cyrus Vance, Joe Califano, Robert McNamara took the Bay of Pig Cubans and put them in airplanes, and they bombed the Belgian Congo. They bombed them. Malcolm even talks about that, about the airplanes. You all don't remember that, do you? When they was bombing them up over there to get them right for Mobutu in the Congo. This is too deep, too deep. It then goes on to say, and this idea of trusteeship is the same thing that came out of that Council on Foreign Relations study, which came out 3 months before this. It says that during the 80s, the old style of aid was largely discontinued. It says that in 1982, Margaret Thatcher proved that the use of force with your colony, as in the Falklands, set the trend for Reagan in 83 in Grenada, as Reagan intervened to reverse an extremist coup in Grenada. Extremist. Then they destabilized Manly in Jamaica. They tried to jack up Castro still, and as well as went all through that Caribbean region to assure that the Caribbean didn't leak up with anti-colonial activity in Nicaragua, Guatemala, and other spots, El Salvador, and the other places. It says, but Somalia marked a new turning point. Here, there could be no question of invitation from the local government, since no such body existed. And the whole purpose of the landing was to assure aid supplies got where they were needed, and to protect them and the aid workers from armed bands that divided the country between themselves. But armed intervention, by its very nature, is bound to prove unsatisfactory. And the American effort has already run into some minor difficulties. It says here that it's worth remembering that the original Dutch, Portuguese, and British traders who came to Africa coast in the early modern period with the aim of doing business and no intention of settling faced exactly the same problem. They could not trade without stability, and to get stability, they had to impose it. Like they just showed up without a plan to take the country. They said, damn, we can't get Africans to jump on the ship fast enough. We'll have to colonize Alzania. They didn't say no dumb shit like that. The Dutch East Indian Company and all those others. Get the book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, and any number of other examine the colonial experience. The financing from Europe of colonial ships to travel anywhere there were people of color and take the land. And the concept is concluded by saying the trusteeship system should be instigated by the Security Council of the United Nations, who could commit a territory where authority has been broken down to one or more trustees that would be empowered not merely to impose order by force, but to assume political function. They would also, in effect, possess the sovereign powers over the country. Their mandate would usually be limited in duration to 5, 10, 20 years, for example, and subject to supervision by the Security Council. Who is on the Security Council? Who is on the Security Council? Holler it out. Britain, France, China, United States, and Russia, Soviet Union. It then says, and their ultimate object would be to take constitutional measures to ensure a return to effective self-government with all deliberate speed. I stress effective because we must not repeat the mistake of the 60s. What did they do in the 60s? They walked out. The trusteeship should not plan to withdraw until there are reasonable certainty that the return of independence will be successful this time, so the mandate may last 50 or 100 years, which means it could never end. So don't let it start. And it says the problem of some states outside Africa, it says, and listen to this, it's deep. The problems of Africa are not created by colonialism or demographics or national disasters or shortage of credit. Most of the horrors, including famine, are created by government, bad, incompetent, and corrupt governments, usually all three, or by no government at all. Meaning that, I got you, brother, I heard you, I heard you, I heard you. Now, you got to have some loyalty to it, too. I want that. Now, it says, there ain't going to be no we don't protect it. Now, so it says that no one did this to them, that they did it to themselves. And that only works again when there's no analysis. Says the basic cause is obvious but never publicly admitted. Some states are not yet fit to govern themselves. Their continued existence and the violence and human degradation they breed is a threat to the stability of their neighbors as well as an affront to our conscience. There is a moral issue here. The civilized way to go out to these desperate places and govern. By the civilized world, we eventually want to include potential trustees like Germany and Japan, which will soon be eligible for permanent membership in the Security Council, which have proved themselves models of public administration. Listen to this. They're going to find you some more leaders. Russia, China, and India will eventually play their part. Educate them in the global responsibilities that their size and numbers obligate them to assume. There must be several models of trusteeship, ranging from provisions of basic government where none exists to setting up an international security network and mandatory economic management. If done firmly and confidently, such state building will prove popular. It is important, therefore, that the first pilot projects be chosen carefully and its trustees experienced. Somalia, Liberia, Haiti, Zaire, followed by Angola and Mozambique are the likely candidates. Angola was just recognized. The only satisfaction will be the unspoken gratitude of the millions of misgoverned, ungoverned people who will find this altruistic revival the only way out of their present intractable miseries. You understand? That's the article. I had to finish that. What they have said in the article is take colonialism or death. That's what the fuck it says. That's April 18th. New York Times, Sunday Magazine, and all those niggas that went to Africa who all get the New York Times at their home have not once responded to it. They've gone there as if there's no clock involved in Africa. Now, I need to do this. Brother Maurice, if you would, please. I would like to pass the hat for the Good Life, who have to hold their staff over to clean up after us after we're gone. Put a little donation in there for the Good Life because I want you to support them for us being here. Okay, you take care of that, Brother Maurice? Okay? And don't forget, we'll be here again on Friday about Black-Jewish Relations 93. Just to tell you in closing, this Council article, which appeared in January, don't move yet, throw some money, throw $1 or something in the Good Life bucket. Because they'll get a wrong feeling like I get a wrong feeling if you walked out on me. And we want to help them like they help us. That's important. This CFR story makes a suggestion. You all remember me mentioning Foreign Policy Magazine fall of 1990, where they talked about Africa would be like specters at the feast? And aid to Africa will be palliative, not curative. That's up in my tapes. Remember that. That was a 1990 article about the post-Cold War world written by Richard Ullman in Foreign Policy, which suggested that we will be specters at the feast. We'll be nuisances to the New World Order, and if we didn't move around the three clusters of the world, we will be eaten up and destroyed. Remember that story, because this is the sister story to it. And what it says, which I thought was most interesting, and in that story I showed you here, one of the writers of this story in time is the white woman that wrote this story in the CFR. Marguerite, what's her name? Marguerite Michaels, Nairobi Bureau Chief of Time Magazine, is the Edward R. Murrow Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. See, they usually hold 2-3 spots when they doing something. Anyway, that CFR article says, and I want you to remember this, date, December, January 93, it's their year-end review called America and the Changing World. Every year they do a year-end review story. This is their year-end review story on Africa. And it just contains such statement as, it just might find this a little interesting and find how it corresponds with what was being said in the other story. It says one policymaker to quip that what really needs to be done is to fence off Africa, regionalize its various economies, and oversee its government structures for the next 50 years. Hear that similarity to the other story? In 5 years, Africans will be begging to be recolonized. That's in the story. And that's the point to the story. The situation is so dire that one American diplomat said in 5 years, Africans will be begging to be recolonized. Not neo-colonized, but recolonized. That's an important statement. Now, what I got to show you quickly in closing is the Shaft in Africa meeting. One of the governments that hung out with the Shaft in Africa meeting was the Botswana government. What you need to know about the Botswana government is that it's not recognized by any black country on the globe. It's an artificial creation by the South African government to give so-called nation-state status to someone still under South African control. What is unique about Botswana, which is one of those hosting African countries to the summit, is it's the only African country to give 100% of all diamonds and all gold to De Beers diamond mines. The only country. But then they're controlled totally by the whole South African experience. Gabon, the Ivory Coast. Look at the book, The Israeli Connection, and look and see the African countries that broke ranks and opened up relationships with Is It Real? You will see it was Ivory Coast, Gabon, Sierra Leone. The same ones hosting the summit. Now my question is, can you be for Is It Real and be for liberation? Africa as a country gets 600 million in government aid. Is It Real gets 4 billion. Okay? So how could you be the same people? That was one of you. Need to remember that. All of these stories about the African summit, I'll start off black and Jewish relations, but remember this, such major corporations as Chevron, Coca-Cola, and IBM sent representatives and sponsored lunches and receptions. Can Coca-Cola go to Africa with liberation movement? Well, look at the program of the summit. You seen the program? This is the program of the summit, and I appreciate that brother for having found it. I'm going to show you these real copies. I'm going to raffle off those 9